Hey guys, welcome back to another video from Hoops Empire. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the newly agreed upon Supermax extension for Celtics star Jaylen Brown. We will be looking at its pros, cons, financial implications, and more. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. It was reported today from multiple sources that the Boston Celtics have officially agreed on an extension with 8th-year wing Jaylen Brown. Not just any extension though, but a Supermax extension that, based on current cap projections, will be valued at over $300 million in its 5-year span. The deal will have no player option, which is good for the Celtics, and more interestingly includes a trade kicker, which we will get into later in this video. Obviously, Jaylen Brown has been a hot topic for a while now amongst Celtics Twitter and general Celtics media, largely bearing the question on if he is deserving of that Supermax contract or not. It is a layered question, but let's look at it from both angles. From the Celtics angle, the team that just gave him that money, they probably didn't see an alternative. What is the other option at this point, with a Damian Lillard trade seemingly out of the picture? Let Jaylen Brown walk and just build from there? Seems like a poor organizational decision to do that. I've had my qualms with Jaylen Brown and his on-court impact, as I'm sure you guys already know, but at the end of the day, there is no denying that he's a good player. He's a 26-year-old wing who's a 2-time All-Star, just made the All-NBA second team, and pretty much just averaged 27, 7, and 4 in his 7th season. To act like he isn't good would be super disingenuous, despite some issues you or I may have with a deeper impact. But from Boston's point of view, it makes all too much sense to extend him. Just pay the man, hope he improves, and if things still aren't leading to rings in a few years, they could try to trade him, as I'm sure there will still be suitors at that point. As of right now, the Celtics are not going to find a guy with more playoff experience than Jaylen Brown. Largely because he has the 19th most playoff games played of any active player, being by far the youngest player in that top 20. He has proven himself in big moments before, and the Celtics are banking on him to do it again, and help Jason, Kristaps, and other Celtics bring Boston that elusive Banner 18. Playing devil's advocate now, there are reasons to be skeptical of this move for Boston. For starters, outside of the solid box score numbers, Jaylen's advanced metrics and impact stats rank pretty low amongst the company that he has now been put in. There are currently 7 players on a designated veteran contract, otherwise known as the Supermax. Those players are Nikola Jokic, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, and now Jaylen Brown. Obviously, there will be more in the coming years, but regardless, there's a pretty large discrepancy in impact statistics between Brown and the other players listed. Looking at advanced stats first, and I know many of these sound funny but are actually well calculated and respected statistics in the basketball world, Jaylen Brown ranks dead last out of these 7 in LeBron, LeBron WAR, LeBron Box, EPM, DPM, luck-adjusted RAPM, and DRIP, among virtually any other advanced calculation statistic. Looking at on-off net rating, Jaylen Brown also ranks dead last there, having a -4 on-off net rating swing, meaning Boston is 4 points per 100 better without Jaylen Brown on the court. The next worst out of that group is Karl Anthony Towns at a near-even net swing, with all the other players having close to a +10 or better. Jaylen consistently struggled to lead lineups without Tatum on the court. Looking at the net rating combinations of Tatum and Brown, it's pretty jarring. The best net rating combo of Tatum and Brown was Tatum on with Brown off, coming in at a net rating of +12. The next best was Tatum and Brown together at +5.7. After that, it was Brown without Tatum at +3.2, which means basically, over a 2,000-minute sample, it was just straight up more effective to have Tatum on the court without Brown rather than both on, or JB by himself. A lineup with neither of the Jays had a net rating of +1.3, meaning that the difference between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is virtually the same amount of net rating points away from having both of them on. Just disappointing numbers all around. Jaylen was one of the highest usage players this past season, posting a 31.4% usage rate. Out of the 16 players who had a usage percentage of at least 30%, Jaylen was dead last again at 16.5% in assist percentage. The average assist percentage of the other top 16 players was 30.5%. Like I said before, despite good box score stats, the impact beyond that was not really there, unfortunately. And I will stress this again and again, this is not me hating on Jaylen Brown. What this is the explanation of valid and fairly important statistics that somewhat prove that box score stats don't always equal or match impact. It is a legitimate question to ask if Jaylen Brown should be the recipient of the largest contract in league history, as this kind of feels more like when Mike Conley was the highest paid player in history and less like when a guy like Jokic or Curry had that title. Regardless, it will be short-held anyways, as the cap will continue to rise and soon he won't even be top 10 in salary. But that isn't really the point. It's more the question of whether he's deserving of that Supermax contract. And regardless of what you may think, it does give a troubling outlook to the Celtics' future cap situations. It means nothing for the upcoming 2023-24 season, as the extension does not come into effect until 2024-25, but once we hit that mark, things get a little rough. In the 24-25 season, the Celtics will have about $116.5 million tied up in the big three of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. Keep in mind, the salary cap estimations for that season are currently at $142 million, meaning that just those three players will be getting roughly 82% of the salary cap. Factor in guys on contract already, like Brogdon, White, Rob Williams, Al Horford, and others, and the Celtics' current cap figure adds up to nearly $190 million tied up in just 11 rostered players. And that second apron for that season, you guessed it, also $190 million. As of this moment, with 11 players under contract in the 2024-25 season, the Celtics would already surpass that new second apron. This means no more taxpayer mid-level exception, no more buyout players, no more trading first-round picks 7 years out, no sending less salary in trades, among other penalties. Virtually punting any team-building ability outside of veteran minimums, drafted players, and trading without the ability to salary match with less salary. But wait, it gets better. Jason Tatum is eligible to opt out of his player option after the 2024-25 season. And due to making All-NBA already multiple times in his career, he's eligible for a Supermax contract. Based on the current cap projections, his number will be even more monstrous than Brown's, probably somewhere in the 5-year, $330 million range. Subject to change, of course. About an average of $65 million, with the final year getting close to, if not over, $80 million in salary. And in that 2025-26 season, only Tatum, in this hypothetical, Brown, Porzingis, Robert Williams, and Jordan Walsh would be on the team. Factoring in estimates of the cap, those 5 players would be making a combined $158 million, where the salary cap is currently estimated at $156 million. 5 players, and you're already over the salary cap, with only about $30 to $40 million to spare before getting very high in the tax and potentially far over that second apron again. Theoretically, as their contracts increase, so will the cap. But at the same time, their numbers are going to jump exponentially year to year. Should be quite interesting to see what they do down the line. But back to one of the first points I made about Jaylen Brown's contract, the trade kicker. Many may not even know what that is, but to explain as simply as possible, it's otherwise known as a trade bonus, because if you get traded with one of these in your contract, you get more money. In most cases, trade kickers are 15% of the remaining deal. This might cause some stress hearing 15% after we just said Jaylen Brown is making $300+ million, but it's not as bad as it sounds. There has never been a scenario where a Supermax player with a trade kicker was actually traded. So this is still a bit unprecedented, but basically the trade kicker cannot make the player's salary exceed 35% of the cap. So in Jaylen Brown's situation currently, where he's slotted to make 35% of the cap in 2024-25, and current projections have him at upwards of 35% in the years after that, this won't really come into effect at all. In reality, this was more of a, hey, we like you and want to prove it after putting you in all those trade rumors over the years, sort of thing. As based on projections, it has no actual effect on his contract or its value. That is, unless there is an unforeseen super spike in the cap that would lower JB's salary percentage to sub 35. But that probably won't happen soon. Maybe it would if a new TV deal came into effect in the coming years. So to answer the question of this video, will the Celtics regret the Jaylen Brown extension? I'm not really sure. I don't love the deal personally. I love it for him, but I don't love it for the team. If he plays at his current level, I would say it's regrettable. But if he improves, it could potentially be a fitting deal. And let's hope it's the latter. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the extension that gives Jaylen Brown the biggest contract in NBA history. And before you go, make sure to like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, have a good one.